In the early hours of August 29, 1973, Roger Chapman, a British Royal Navy submariner, and Roger Mallinson, an engineer, were tasked with the installation of transatlantic telephone cable on the ocean floor, approximately 240 kilometers southwest of Cork in Southern Ireland. Their mission required descending to a depth of 1,600 feet in a compact submersible known as Pisces III. Their job involved utilizing water jets to liquefy the oceanic mud, position the cable, and then bury it beneath more mud. The nature of their work was physically draining due to the confined space, lengthy 8-hour shifts, and severely limited visibility. Their experience was akin to navigating a motorway in a dense fog, attempting to follow a white line. The level of focus demanded was extraordinary. One operator would simultaneously handle the sub's controls and the manipulator, an intricate mechanical arm capable of lifting, twisting, extending, and moving laterally. They would then alternate roles. The physical discomfort was significant as they had to kneel, positioning their heads close to their knees. This small submersible, despite being less powerful than a full-scale submarine and necessitating a tow from a larger vessel for diving and surfacing, was their workspace. The day's shift was nearly over, and Pisces was preparing to reconnect to the cables from their mother ship, Voyager. Exhausted and silent, the pair bobbed on the surface, damp with perspiration and famished. As they were hauled towards the Voyager by a tow line, the submarine's water alarm started to wail. Neither of them was overly concerned initially. Condensation often infiltrated the filters, triggering such alerts. However, concern turned to panic as Pisces began sinking and its portholes started darkening. Unknown to them, a hatch cover Mallinson had earlier identified for repair but had been overruled by his superiors, was leaking, allowing 6 tons of water to flood in. "Look at the bloody depth gauge," Chapman yelled as they watched the needle swiftly drop to 100 feet, then 150. Suddenly, at 175 feet, Pisces' descent halted, throwing both men against the metallic interior. The sub was hanging precariously, nose down, suspended by the tow line, violently shaking as the current buffeted it like a toy. Meanwhile, aboard the Voyager, an emergency diver prepared to descend and attach a second, stronger line, a hazardous but seemingly necessary plan. Back in the submersible, the men faced new dangers. A spare battery for the underwater telephone, roughly the size of a brick, had dislodged and was violently careening around the cabin. A sonar set had also come loose, posing additional threats. With wrench in hand, Mallinson struggled to unfasten the floor bolt that held the 400 pounds lead block used for extra ballast, an unnecessary weight under their current circumstances. However, as he loosened the bolt, a loud bang rocked Pisces and the depth gauge began to plummet. The tow line had snapped. Free of its final constraint, the sub flipped and began sinking tail first. In a frenzied hurry, the pilots secured all loose items to avoid damage upon impact, then turned off electrical equipment to mitigate fire risk. As the depth gauge spun past 1,000 feet and then 1,200, Chapman prepared cushions across the cabin to absorb their inevitable crash. The roaring noise of the outer motors spinning out of control resembled a Stuka dive bomber. "Bite on a rag!" Mallinson yelled, as they both stuffed cloth into their mouths to avoid biting through their tongues upon impact. The submarine made a violent landing on the seabed, and the 2 men were flung against the cabin walls. Once they regained their bearings and lit a torch, the depth gauge showed a chilling 1,575 feet. They were trapped at a depth never before encountered in a submarine rescue, enough to drown the Empire State Building. In near silence, Chapman and Mallinson sat, scarcely daring to breathe, dreading that they might be perched on the continental shelf's edge, beyond which lay a seemingly bottomless chasm. Their first concern was their dwindling oxygen supply. Hypothetically, their full tank could last up to 30 hours. By lying motionless and controlling their breathing, they might stretch this to 3 days. However, this theoretical time frame would be irrelevant if they could not also engage the scrubber, an electric filter to remove the carbon dioxide they exhaled. Without it, they would rapidly suffocate. Mallinson's thoughts trailed back to the past day, His sickness, a consequence of food poisoning from a pub meat pie consumed during his last leave, had persisted for several days. Nevertheless, he spent the entire night repairing the sub's manipulator, the robotic arm crucial for handling tools and cables underwater. Mallinson was a skilled engineer who had a pivotal role in restoring the Pisces III after acquiring it in a dilapidated condition. There was arguably no one else more familiar with this vessel's mechanical intricacies. Yet, the manipulator wasn't the only thing on the 35-year-old father of three's mind. The aft sphere hatch, comparable to a saloon car's boot, showed signs of wear. It provided access to the equipment storage bay and didn't open onto the main cabin. Yet, it was crucial to keep it watertight. Despite pointing out the need for repair to his superiors, he was bluntly instructed to disregard the issue. Despite his reservations, Mallinson complied with the decision not to repair the hatch, but his intuition led him to replace a half-used oxygen canister with a full one. The company guideline indicated half a tank was sufficient for an 8-hour operation. As oxygen was costly, it was recommended not to waste half-full canisters. Yet, Mallinson went against protocol. With no toilet and minimal food and water, they survived on a flask of coffee, a small milk carton, and a box of sugar. They also carried a can of lemonade and some sandwiches. Mallinson preferred jam, while Chapman, a 28-year-old ex-Royal Navy submariner, opted for cheese and chutney. Dolphins occasionally provided a welcome distraction. A day prior, while Mallinson was in the Voyager's communications room, dolphin sounds had interfered with the underwater telephone messages. He didn't mind their chatter and had even conversed with them before. When informed of a large dolphin pod near the bow, Mallinson left his station to fetch his camera. "I've never seen anything like it," he commented. The whole sea, from horizon to horizon, was dolphins. Unfortunately, by the time he was ready to capture the spectacle, all that remained were 6 retreating tails. Now confronted with a submariner's worst fear, Mallinson and Chapman had to check the scrubber, the device designed to remove carbon dioxide. Thankfully, it functioned. They set 2 plastic dial clockwork timers to sound an alarm every 30 minutes, reminding them to activate the scrubber. If they both dozed off without switching it on, it was likely they would not awaken. The gravity of their predicament began to take hold. Anxiety had Chapman in its grip, causing trembling. There was no escape. At this depth, the immense water pressure rendered the hatch immovable and could instantly crush their bodies. Even if they somehow made it to the surface, it would take about 15 minutes, far beyond their breath-holding capabilities. Chapman assessed their provisions. Their resources consisted of a damp cheese and chutney sandwich, a lemonade can, half a flask of black coffee, powdered milk, sugar, 2 apples, some paper cups, a few biscuits, and glucose tablets. There was no water. Moreover, the cabin's internal temperature was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but due to the 95% humidity and condensation lining the walls, it felt considerably colder. The underwater radio system was functional. A message from above informed them that the Voyager was returning to Ireland for assistance, a help that was approximately 30 hours away. Until then, all they could do was wait. Additional ships joined the rescue efforts, including the Royal Navy's survey vessel, HMS Hecate, a Canadian Coast Guard ship, and a U.S. Navy submersible specially designed for extracting unexploded bombs from the ocean floor. Mallinson's anxiety for his wife Pamela and their children grew. He knew Chapman was newly married to June, but had no children yet. He was unsure whether Chapman found this fact comforting or regrettable. Yet, in typical British fashion, Mallinson deemed it inappropriate to probe further. To divert his mind, Mallinson, an enthusiastic musician, visualized box organ music, occasionally gesturing as if playing a keyboard. It was one of the few movements either man permitted themselves. They understood that by remaining still and breathing lightly, they could drastically cut down their oxygen consumption. They also started to adjust the CO2 scrubbers intervals, creating longer gaps between cycles. This approach made the air thinner, extending their oxygen reserves. However, It also triggered bodily discomforts and intense headaches. Mallinson, being an engineer, preferred verbalizing his thoughts and wanted to discuss how divers might attach a tow line to the Pisces' inverted stern. In contrast, Chapman, a seasoned Navy veteran, took a fatalistic stance. He was aware they couldn't contribute to their own rescue and that conversation was literally an oxygen waste. Mallinson harbored another concern. His stomach, still reeling from the pub's meat pie, suffered from cramps. Eventually, he had to address the issue. Without a toilet, he utilized a plastic bag and secured it. The smell exacerbated the already stifling environment. The curved walls were wet with the condensation from their breath, and when a water droplet splashed on Chapman's face, his initial fear was a leakage in the outer shell. To ward off the cold, the men snuggled together, spooning as mountain rescue teams do to fight hypothermia. Sleep, when possible, was brief. Mallinson's severe headache persisted, made worse by the need to lie with his feet positioned higher than his head. Both men were reaching a critical level of thirst. With no water available, their only recourse was to lick moisture from their fingers. Over the subsequent grueling hours, they received sporadic updates via phone that divers were continuously trying to locate them. However, the phone connection was often drowned out by a cacophony of clicks and rattles, the noise of dolphins. Chapman found this disturbance annoying, while Mallinson derived an odd sense of solace from it. To assist the divers, they attempted to chant in hopes that their voices would somehow penetrate the oceanic silence. Here we are, somewhere near the cable, must be near the pinger. Depth is 1,575 feet. Come and find us. The pinger was a device on the transatlantic phone cable. Its deafening noise indicated its proximity, thus providing a potential clue to their location. Their hopes rose and fell like the ocean tides. By Friday afternoon, after being marooned for over 50 hours, they were found by their sister sub, Pisces III. They marked the occasion by opening the can of lemonade. However, numerous attempts to attach a rescue line ended in failure. One submersible developed a leak and had to retreat to the surface. Another encountered an electrical glitch. Once, a hook and line simply malfunctioned and could not be secured. Finally, in the wee hours of Saturday, nearly 70 hours into their ordeal, a line was fastened. Yet, the most terrifying phase of their rescue was just starting. As the submarine jerked upwards, both men were flung against the bulkhead. Their makeshift plastic bag toilets burst. The metallic sphere shook and spun, tossing them about in what Chapman referred to as a chaotic inverted realm of noise, nauseating odor, and terror. Their dominant fear was the potential snapping of the rescue line, resulting in the sub plummeting and possibly bursting open upon impact. The ascent had to be stopped twice, the first time due to entanglement of another sub in the rescue line, and the second to fasten a stronger rope. After 76 hours of pure terror, one final dread remained. Even if Pisces III surfaced, would opening the cabin hatch be feasible? The hatch was severely damaged and likely to be stuck. The rescue team attempted to force open the bolts fastening the hatch as Mallinson and Chapman, still trapped inside, banged on it with their fists. Air was pumped in to equilibrate the pressure inside and outside. Finally, with a resounding bang, the hatch burst open. At this moment, the two men had their only dispute throughout the ordeal, with each insisting that the other should be the first to exit through the hatch to safety. Upon later inspection of the cylinder, they realized the narrowness of their escape from asphyxiation. There was only 12 minutes worth of oxygen left. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to check out the other great content on our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.